And boom, I guess I'm live, or not live, but like recording. Just hit the record button, which is quite an accomplishment since this is my first podcast in the best podcast ever podcast. And so today, because it is the first podcast, I want to tell you guys about me. It's, the most important subject on this podcast is this girl. I want to tell you a little bit about my life because I feel like I am an old soul in a way. And it's not because I am really wise or I'm going to tell you, I'm going to reveal, great mystery of the meaning of life to you. But because I have had, for some reason, I don't know, maybe it's just luck, or maybe it's destiny, I don't know, but I have lived so many different experiences and contexts and things in my life that I feel like I have probably had the same experiences as 7 or 8 people have throughout their entire lives, only crammed into 30 years, which is my age. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about it. And so today I'm going to start by talking about one of the central things in my life, which is all the experiences that I have had as a camgirl. And I want to start, a lot of people know about this, but I have never sat down and told the whole story from my point of view. One-on-one, like I feel like I'm doing right now. I'm recording this like I'm talking to a friend. Really, guy, because honestly, I don't know how many people are going to watch this. So I wanted to take a moment and tell my story. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I was born many moons ago in a tiny, tiny country in the uppermost part of South America called Venezuela. And although the name of the country is very funny, and people tend to think I come from Minnesota when I say Venezuela, the truth is it wasn't really a fun place to live in. My family lived and thrived in Venezuela for many, many years until when I turned 13, the country did a 180 turn for the worse, and it became, the communist paradise that we all have grown to love or hate, And you probably heard about the whole thing, in the news, or maybe you saw something online, or maybe you saw a video on YouTube. There's been a lot of information going around since I left. But imagine this. Imagine you are a child and you have lived in comfort and happiness in a stable and, tranquil place. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, your life changes completely. And you go from, watching cartoons in the afternoon and having, cookies with milk and going to school and worrying about nothing, to suddenly bread lines, power outages, and your family's factory has been expropriated by the state. So that's the situation that I was in. And I am not going to go into detail about what it was like in Venezuela. I want to save that for another podcast. Today I want to focus on something else entirely. But I do want to make sure that you understand the context. So I grew up in Venezuela under a communist regime. And on top of that, I lived in a very, very tiny, tight-knit community, the Jewish community of Caracas. That's where I grew up in. And it was a very, strong bonds, tiny, suffocating experience growing up in the Jewish community. So all of that kind of, you have to know this to be able to put some context on the story that I am about to tell you. So I had just graduated from college. I had tried to leave Venezuela many times, but my parents were always, they didn't want their, eldest child to leave, and they kind of wanted me to stay. So we kind of got to different agreements, and the last agreement was that I was going to try and leave after I graduated from college. So I went to college and I got a journalism degree. And when I graduated, I thought that it was time for me to leave, and my parents didn't want me to leave. And honestly, I didn't really have any money. I had been working at HBO Latin America for 2 years, and the salary was the equivalent of $100 a month. And I managed to save almost every penny from my job. And after 2 years, I had managed to save $900. And that's my lifetime savings was $900. And luckily for me, a friend of mine, her name was Mary, was getting married. And she wanted me to be her maid of honor. And she was getting married in the United States. So she invited me to her wedding. And she invited me to stay at her home for a couple of weeks. And she was living in Miami Beach. And so I packed my bags. And at this point, I want you to understand that I was living in Venezuela and I had just graduated college. And the future was looking quite dim for me. And I had a really, really bad depression. I am not a depressive person. I'm a really happy, bubbly person. But I was in such a dark and low place in my life. I was having panic attacks, and I think it was mainly caused by all the turmoil, the fact that everything was so crazy with, the communist regime, and my lack of opportunities for my future, the fact that I had just graduated into nothing because I was a journalist, all the newspapers, all the TV channels were getting closed by the government. There was just for me, my future looked like 50 shades of black. And I was really depressed. So I took this opportunity of going to the US, for my friend's wedding as a chance to relax and let go of, all the stress. But when I got to the US, I was shocked. Because you go outside, you go out on the street and people were happy and people were shopping and people were having conversations that had nothing to do with how, if they were going to be able to find food tomorrow. And people were talking about things other than whether or not the government was going to close the borders. And, they were talking about TV and movies and laughing. And there was a lot of space because everything was so overcrowded in Venezuela. And there was space, you could walk in the street without bumping into everybody, basically. And I just felt so good. I didn't want to go back. I for the life of me, the last thing that I wanted was to go back to that place. And I promised, I swore to myself that I was going to do anything in my power not to go back. And so I kind of first I tried to have my, stay longer at my friend's place. But then it became obvious that I was kind of overextending my stay, and so I had to look for alternatives. And also I left with $900 in my back pocket, and it's not very easy to stretch them, even if you're living in somebody's couch. So I didn't know what to do. I mean, I am a pretty resourceful person, and I do have a lot of different skills. I'm not a master at anything, but I have a lot of skills that I am good enough at, that I am much better than the average person, just not an expert on. And I decided to start doing odd jobs. So I started right away. And two things that I was doing was I found this website. It was called Model Mayhem, and it had like models and makeup artists and people retouching photos. And I thought, okay, I am definitely not a model. I'm definitely cute, but I'm not sure that I can be a model. And I'm not a photographer. I didn't even have like a phone. My phone didn't have a camera. Okay, that's pretty much the best way to describe like how inexperienced I was with this. But I was really good at Photoshop, and I was really good at makeup because I had been doing my friend's makeup. And I was broke as a joke. So you know what I did? And this is really, really depressing. But I went to Ulta, which is like the poor man version of Sephora, where they have like all the drugstore brands. And I stock up on I got like 2 shades of Revlon foundation, which was like a terrible, embarrassingly cheap foundation. And the darkest one and like the lightest one. And then I bought a bunch of clear plastic kind of jars for the traveling. And I just mixed them in different proportions so I could have like a palette of different foundations. And I pretty much did stuff like this with every single product on my makeup bag, on my makeup case. And I started to advertise myself as a makeup artist on both Craigslist and Model Mayhem. That's how desperate I was. And I was also retouching pictures, and they would pay me $10 per picture for retouching them. And I was so lucky. This is why I say that I am the luckiest person alive. I don't know who's taking care of me up there in the sky, but thank you. Because I got a stripper. I bagged a very popular stripper who requested my services. She first got me as a makeup artist, and I started doing her makeup every day. And her name was Angelina Devine. She was this super tall, super slender Eastern European woman with a beautiful face. She had like blue eyes and black hair, and she had, you could tell that she had a few things done. Like she had that kind of like a little bit of too much surgery look going on, but she was still pretty gorgeous. And when I say she was a popular girl, I don't mean among the clients only, but she had like so many stripper friends. She was like the life of the party. The life of the party, I swear. And so what happened was she was getting her portfolio revamped. I don't know why she needed pictures. I suspected for a while that she was a call girl as well. I never really had the guts to ask her directly. But I think that's what she was. The point is, she was hiring me daily to do her makeup. And I would talk her ear off. I was like, yeah, this foundation is excellent. It's so good. And I was using like this Revlon trash, But I was really good at makeup, and truly there's not that big of a difference between good drugstore brands like Revlon and, high-end stuff. So she was really happy and really pleased, and she loved many things about me. The first thing that she liked about me was that I am naturally a non-judgmental person. Like I will never judge anybody for their their decisions or whatever it is they choose to do with their lives. I think as long as you're not hurting anybody else, your one responsibility is to take care of yourself and do what makes you feel the happiest and the most fulfilled and whatever makes sense to you. And I love hearing about people's experiences, and I never ever judge anybody because I guess I'm just not a judgmental person. And at the same time, I feel like I don't know the circumstances. I don't know the context of, of people to make a judgment on their decisions. So she loved that she could talk to me about anything. She could talk to me about clients. She could talk to me about her struggles. She could talk to me. She could make phone calls while I was doing her makeup and her hair, and she could call her friends and talk about the club or whatever it is that she had to talk to them about. And I would never judge her. I would listen, and she loved that about me. And the other thing that she really liked was that I was ready to go at any time of the day. Like, she could call me at like 5 a.m. and I would be there. And she paid so well. She was paying me. I remember at one time she booked me like 4 times in a week, and I made, just from her that week, I made $900. And she would pay up in cash, no questions asked, no haggling, nothing. And I was just shocked that this woman had so much disposable income to spend, like $1,000 a week on just makeup and hair. But hey, And the cool thing about this is Angelina Devine hooked me up with a bunch of her stripper friends. So I was like the official makeup artist for the Miami stripper scene. And obviously, thank God, I could update my makeup case with all the profit that I made. But still, on average, I was making around $2,000 a month, which is really low to make a living in the US, especially if you're living in Miami Beach, which is quite expensive. So at first, before I bagged this whole Angelina Devine thing, and when I was just retouching photos and struggling really hard, I knew that I had overstayed. My friend was really generous, and she welcomed me, but I had been in her house for like 2.5 weeks, and I had to get out of there. And I didn't have enough money to rent a place. They ask when you live in the United States if you're gonna, or at least in Florida, I don't know the rest of the US, but in Florida and other states, they will typically ask you for 3 months rent up front. So that's the first month, last month, and security deposit. And I really didn't have that. I didn't really have it. And for a little while, I was, couch surfing. I had a few friends in Miami. I was couch surfing. But after a while, I realized that it wasn't really a long-term strategy. And I was not going to be, I was not going anywhere like being homeless in the US. So I had a friend, his name is Israel, and I asked him if he had a few apartments in Miami, and I asked him if he could let me stay in one of them. And luckily for me, he was in between tenants in one of the apartments. So I had to keep everything very tidy and very clean because, anyone could come to show the apartment at any minute. So I had to be ready to go and keep the apartment in perfect condition. But that's how I managed to stay. And so for a while, I was living rent-free and doing all these odd jobs. And finally, I could make enough money to move into a tiny, tiny place. But I'm telling you this whole story with Angelina Devine because she's the person who introduced me to the whole concept of camming. And I'm going to open this thing because my throat is getting a little bit dry. And I need a little bit of all right. So this is a question that I get a lot. And, normally what I will say, because I don't like to go into detail about the thing, it's a very long explanation, and not everybody wants to hear me talk about this on the regular. So I try to keep it short, and I say, a friend dared me to do it. And it's true. A friend did dare me to do it. But the story is a little bit more complex. It's a little bit more complicated than that, how I started camming. So how do you start camming? I've talked to so many different camgirls, and I always ask them the same question, like, how did you start? How did you learn about this? And I've had the number one most frequent origin story that I have found is they usually will tell me, oh, a friend told me about it. And it's usually a male friend. So there's a lot of camgirls who had a perv best friend who introduced them, who told them about it. They told them, I think you would do great, and I think you have the personality for this, or you're attractive, and it's very lucrative, and you can, so, word of mouth is the number one reason why somebody will start camming. Number two is some of them just saw a banner or an advertisement somewhere. So, for example, one of my friends, her name is Amber Cutie. She started because she saw an ad on Craigslist. No, on Reddit. She saw, or was it 4chan? Yeah, I'm sorry, 4chan. I think it was 4chan. I think she saw somebody talk about camming on 4chan, and this was way before even I got into camming. And then I've had other friends who've seen pop-ups. So I had a friend from Australia, and she told me she started because she used to go, she was pretty caliente. And so she would often go into Omegle or chat roulette to talk to random dudes. And one day she saw a banner, and that's how she started camming. There's so many different stories, but in my case, I am one of those word of mouth kind of girl. I never really knew this thing existed. This was completely foreign to me. I was a good girl all my life. Like, if you saw pictures of me, like, from before all of this, I had short hair, and I would wear turtlenecks, and I was like so modest, and I had never, like, I think I got my first kiss when I was like 18, and it's just crazy. This was completely foreign to me, but I was doing makeup for all the strippers. So my friend Angelina Devine, when I talked to her and I told her about, my struggles, whatever, we became kind of friends. She told me, like, well, why don't you strip? You're hot, you're cute, you're young, you could kick ass at this. Why don't you strip? And I remember that conversation was so bizarre, because in the moment, like, when she told me this, I laughed. Like, what are you kidding? What are you kidding? What do you mean? What do you mean? And she was dead serious. She was like, yeah, why not? I mean, and she said, I'm making a lot. And she said she would make 800, 1,000 on a good night. And I was struggling to make that a fortnight, And but at the moment, like, first I laughed, and then I considered it, and then I thought I could never ever do it for many reasons. Like, it's not that I judge anybody who does this, but I personally I know myself, and I know my flaws, and I know my limitations. And I don't like nightclubs. Like, it's hell on earth to me. I could never do that as a job, like go into a nightclub daily. It would completely, I would hate it. And then I would just think about talking to people, like, face to face, like talking to guys face to face, and being like in like an intimate one-on-one situation with strangers in a, kind of like, in that context. It made me I don't know, it made me itchy. It made me feel really really weird. So I said no, I could never do this. Really not for me. I'm gonna freeze. I have like zero confidence. I'm so shy, especially with men. Like, I don't think I could do this. And then she said to me, then why don't you try camming? And I was like, camming? What do you mean camming? So she explained it to me, and she said that she earned $300 a night when she camped. And that's one thing that I had never ever thought about, and I didn't even think it was real. I remember the only contact that I had with this before then, maybe I saw a pop-up of some site like LJ, like Jasmine, and I thought it was the times that I got a pop-up like that, I thought it was probably like a scam, and it was like a video. I didn't think it was real. And also, like, the people on those pop-ups and banners, the girls looked so sad. So I had no contact, no idea. And she dared me. She said, well, I dare you to do it, Let's make a bet. I bet that if you do this, I bet that you won't do it. And I'm going to bet $1,000 that you don't do this. And if you don't do it, you owe me X amount of sessions. I don't know how many it was. I don't remember. And if you do it, I owe you $1,000. And that was quite an incentive. That was quite an incentive. And so, I thought about it and mulled it over. And when I realized that I had nothing to lose, literally nothing to lose, and $1,000 to gain just by trying it one day. And I was kind of pressed for money at the same time because I didn't know how long my friend Israel was going to let me stay at his place. And I was going to have to leave on a short notice as soon as he rented it. And I needed to save as much as I could so that I could move into, another place. Eventually I did. So I thought about all these things and I weighed pros and cons. And if I couldn't, this was like, I was at a spot in my life where on the one hand, I had all these opportunities coming at me, like a bombardment of opportunities. I was doing makeup for all these girls and retouching photos. I found a friend who lent me an apartment, and now I had this other opportunity. I had to find something that I could do so that I could stay. Because if I left, the other option was not really an option. Like, the other option was going back to Venezuela, going back to the communist regime, to the depression that I had, to all these things. And that's something that I really, really didn't want to do. So one day I decided, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's roll with this. I'm going to try it out. And I tried it. I found best site, the one that she recommended me, which did happen to be the best site, and I bought the cheapest webcam that I could find. I went to Best Buy and I got the cheapest one, and I made sure that I opened the box very, very carefully in case it didn't work out. I could bring it back and get a refund for the webcam. Oh my God. And so, I took this thing, I rolled with it. I went home. I had nothing to wear. I had no lighting. It was terrible. And I decided to roll with it and do it. I was so nervous. I remember I had the webcam here on top of my computer, and I pointed it down so that they could only see my chin and, this part of me, because I was only testing it. And I was only chatting. I didn't even use my voice for the first, hour or so. But once I was terrified before, but once I hit stream, it all went down so fast, and it was so exciting, and it was so new, and I just got hooked on the interaction and all the people talking to you, and the tips on the screen were in yellow. I had no idea. I didn't even know how much a token was. That's how clueless I was. I was really doing it so that I could claim the $1,000 that my friend said she was going to give me if I did this. I think she thought I was never going to do it. But I actually genuinely had fun. And so I started to interact with people, and I was not thinking of doing anything. That first day, I think I only, if anything, I did maybe a flash at the end. I don't know. It was just really, really mild. Like, I was just talking to people and being incredibly shy, coy, and awkward. And people loved it. I had, I think, 300 people watching me. And by the end of the night, before going to bed, I turned off the webcam and everything. And I went to see like how many tokens I had earned, and I made the conversion. I went to look how much one token was, and I was there, and I saw the number, and I made the conversion. And I remember I had to do it like 3 or 4 times because I just couldn't believe it. I had made $1,000, $1,000 on my first night, $1,000 in 4 or 5 hours that I was online. And I just couldn't believe it. It was incredible to me. It was like this amazing door of opportunity had opened up for me, and it was just there for the taking. And I've thought about this later, like, what would have happened if my first night I would have made $100 or $200 instead? And I think I wouldn't have done it anymore. Like, I would have gone with my friend and asked her, for the thing that she promised, and I would just forgotten about it, But because it was such an amazing, incredible, crazy amount of money, it was more money. Just for you to get an idea, I mean, $1,000 may not sound like much for a lot of people, but to me, I had saved 2 years of my life, every penny that I could, and I managed to save $900. And here I was months later, and in one night, in 4 or 5 hours, in one night, I had made more than I was able to save 2 years of my life. And that's when I thought, wow, this is not something that I should pass up on. This is something that I should cling to, and I should do this, and I should just see where it will take me. And so on the one hand, yes, it was a lifesaver. If I hadn't done this, I don't think I could have continued to do these odd jobs forever and stay in the US. I would have eventually have to go back to Venezuela. I don't know what I would be doing right now if that had been the case. I would probably be still living in Venezuela. I have family still there. I have friends who are still there. And I think it's like people who are like dead but alive. You know what I mean? They have buried themselves alive in this insane regime. And the thought that I could be there right now and I could be doing bread lines and facing, firing squads and bread lines and famine and power outages and all these horrible, horrible things. And my hair it's really terrifying to me. Terrifying. And I am so grateful to camming because it literally saved my life. Literally, it saved my life. And you might be thinking right now, like, come on, it couldn't possibly be that, such a definitive moment in your life. I mean, you had a family, and as I said before, my family had a factory, and it's because, my grandfather is a wealthy person. But in truth, even though it might seem like I wasn't completely alone, like completely on my own, I was, because my family didn't want me to leave. My parents actually wanted me to stay. And I remember one conversation I had with my parents after I had left, and they were really upset that I had left in the way that I did, because they said goodbye to me as if I was going on vacation for 2 weeks and I never came back. And I remember my mom was really she was really disappointed in me for leaving her. And she even said that I had betrayed them for leaving. And that was really hard. To me, that was something that was really hard to face. And this was completely unrelated to camming. Like, they didn't know I was doing this. They thought I was doing just makeup still. But it's the fact that I had no support from them. Like, if I had told them I wanted to do this, I wouldn't have any support anyway. Like, they had already frustrated 2 attempts that I had of leaving before this. So this time around, I was on my own. I was completely 100% on my own. And I made it work. And I did what I had to do to be free and independent and live my life in my own terms, in a safe place where I could thrive and be happy. And there's a lot of dignity to that. You know, people have judged me really harshly over the years, and they don't realize how much dignity there is in standing on your own 2 feet, doing things on your terms, breaking free of the abuse that you might be facing in your personal life. Some people fall into camming. This is something that happens to a lot of different camgirls. They come from all these different backgrounds. Some of them come from abusive households. There's a camgirl, very popular camgirl, her name is Stormy. And she comes from a really rough childhood, really terrible family. And she has managed to make, you know, an empire out of herself. And she's, you know, thriving, and she's living her life in her own terms, and she's doing great. And this is something that camming gives people. It's a clean, you know, everybody starts with in the same level. Like, you have the same opportunities as everybody else, and it's 100% dependent on you. Your work, your abilities, your charisma, your luck, your work, your effort. These are the only things that matter. And it's very, I guess in a way, it's equalizing. It's democratic. It's amazing. It's given so many people so many opportunities, including me. And that's how I got into camming. It's quite the story. Now, I want to talk about something that a lot of people ask me about, you know. I have been doing this for many, many years. Actually, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, but first I'm going to do a detour and talk about something else. So after this thing that I'm going to tell right now, I will tell you how much camgirls make and how much I make. But before I go into that, because I know a lot of you probably have that question, I want to tell you about, actually, I don't know which one I should tell you first. Okay, so one option is I could tell you about everything that happened to me when this thing exploded and I got outed. You know, some people found a way to tell my family, friends, and everybody else what I was doing. And it was, probably you can imagine, it was a hurricane of excrement. It was terrible. And I can tell you all the gory details of that. Or I could tell you first about how much we make. But I think I'm gonna keep you waiting to know the numbers, because I know that's the juiciest thing. That's like what people want to know the most. People are like, well, but how much do you make? But how much do you make? But how much do you make? You are probably loaded. You're so rich. So you know what? I am going to tell you, but I'm gonna make you work for it. So now you're gonna have to listen to this other story before then. It's a really good story though. It's really good too. All right, so second story of the night is what happens when the inevitable happens? So what happens when everybody finds out that you're doing this? It's not so easy. You know, I write a lot in model forums, and this is something that a lot of people ask about, like, oh, what do you think is the risk? So, hi, I am a new model, and I want to know, I want to start camming, but I want to know, what do you really think are the chances that somebody's going to find out my video? Because, you know, I have a job, I am a kindergarten teacher, and listen, don't go into this. Don't go into this. Just only start doing this if you have it clear in your mind that there is a very big chance that you're going to get discovered at one point or another. Like, it might never happen to you. I've met models who've been doing this longer than I have, and nobody has ever found out. But just don't do it unless you're like comfortable on the idea that you can deal with the outcome if it does happen. Because, you know, you never know how it's going to happen. Some people start out really small, and then all of a sudden they become super notorious. I had a friend who had, one of my model friends had a video that became like super viral on one of these tubes, and the video had like 6 million views, and that's how her family found out. So you never know what's going to happen. So unless you're prepared to deal with the consequences, just don't go into this. I personally was incredibly naive, had no idea that this could happen. I wanted $1,000 of Angelina Devine. That's what I wanted. I was after $1,000 from my friend Angelina Devine. And I was inexperienced, naive. I had no idea what I was doing, and I went into this, and I got outed. That's the reality. And I wanted to talk about this particularly right now because there have been so far two very recent cases in Europe of two women, one in Italy and one in Spain, who committed suicide after people in their lives found out some lewd videos that they made for their ex-boyfriends or something like that. And they just didn't have the fortitude to deal with the aftermath of this. And they ended up committing suicide. And let me check the names of them, because I'm so disconnected sometimes from the news. I don't really know. I'm going to Google it. So the case in Spain that's going on is a woman. When she was young, she was reckless, and she was caliente. So she shot videos of herself, pleasing herself. And she sent these videos to many different boys that she was dating at the time. Like, she apparently, passed them around quite a bit. Then, fast forward many, many years later, she's married, she has children, and she's working at this huge, company. And somehow her videos get leaked. Like, somebody finds them, I don't know what happened. And so everybody's seeing her videos. And she notices that people are coming, and people from other departments and everything are like just casually walking by her desk and like looking at her and like laughing and giggling and whispering. And that's how she found out that everybody had the video. And so her husband found the video. Her sister-in-law, it gets really dark. Her sister-in-law gave the video to her husband. Her husband didn't know how to deal with this. He went into emotional shock, is what the news is calling it. And she committed suicide. She just couldn't deal. The company she was working in had 2,500 employees. she was like a bombshell. She was like in her youth at least, she was like brunette, kind of tanned, very sexy girl, and or that was the Italian chick. Yeah, the sexy brunette was the Italian chick. This is an entirely different story. And the Spanish woman, I don't even know what she looked like, but the fact is, she committed suicide, and then the Italian girl, which is the brunette bombshell, also committed suicide. And because of, in the case of the Spanish woman, what happened was her office, 2,500 employees would just walk by her daily and like laugh. And this other woman, the Italian one, she was getting bullied online. So she was getting bullied on social media to the point where she just couldn't take it anymore. And she killed herself. So right now, if you turn on the TV in Europe, you're probably going to see something related to these two cases. And it's no longer acceptable. Like, apparently, they are demonizing all the people who shared the videos. And they're calling it gender violence against women. But when this thing happened to me, everybody was okay with it, you know? Everybody's fine. It's fine. She's a whore. It's fine. Send the videos. Spread them like wildfire. Talk in really, really awful terms about her anatomy. Humiliate her in front of everybody. Post the pictures. Send them on DMs. Upload them to App Store, Mega Upload, Fire. What was the name of that other website? I don't even know. Like, the way it happened to me, like, I am someone who can talk about this because I lived through it and I didn't kill myself, okay? So I'm like, you know, when somebody kills themselves, when somebody dies and they like talk to you from beyond, from the, you know, from the afterlife, you get a phone call and it's like your friend who passed away and he can tell you everything about life after death. Okay, I can tell you everything about this, and I didn't die because I'm still alive, because I am strong. I am a small girl, but I'm strong. No, I lived through this. I can tell you everything about this. I can tell you exactly how it feels because I lived through it. And I can tell you it sucks. It's horrible. It's horrifying. And this is the part of the podcast where I'm going to tell you about how it feels when you get outed, when everybody learns what you're doing, because this is the hidden cost of camming. People think camming is so lucrative because, you know, you tend to hear all kinds of comments when you're doing this. People go into your chat room and they will tell you, oh, just because you have a vagina, I wish I had one because then I would be loaded. Like, it was just a matter of, you know, you're only making this much because you have the right genitals. In reality, the reason that camgirls and anybody involved in sex work makes this much is because of the risk. And so in the same way, a miner, somebody who goes down a mine, probably has a better salary than somebody who works 9 to 5 at an office because they're risking their lives every time they go down the mine. Somebody in an oil platform will make tons and tons of money for the same reason. They're risking their lives. There's a really big risk, so not everybody is willing or able to do this. In the case of camming, there's also a really big risk. And the risk is the risk of ostracism, is the risk of being alienated, of being shunned, of being humiliated, and being set aside and laughed at for what you do. And this is exactly what happened to me. So you go into this line of work and you expect usually what people do is they enter this and they expect the best. They have the fear in the back of their mind that something could go wrong, but why would it happen to me? You know, it's the same thing as somebody who goes into an oil platform They don't go thinking it could explode. They don't go thinking something could go wrong and they could die. They go expecting the best. They think, well, why me? Why me? There's tons of people working in platforms, tons of platforms. Why mine? But eventually, somebody does shoulder this damage, the risk. At one point, somebody gets screwed. And I was one of the winning lottery tickets. And the reason was unparalleled with my camming career, I made a really big mistake, which was I started writing a blog. And my blog, because I'm a journalist, right? My blog became really, really popular. And I was really well known in Spain, especially, and also my home country, for my blog and my writing. And it was completely 100% unrelated to camming. I would talk, at first it was a fashion, beauty blog type of thing, and then it became more of a confessional, my own experiences and ideas, and that's when the blog took off. It was like the Oprah of blogs. And then I rode that wave of quite high for quite a while, and I started writing more about politics. And when I started writing more about politics, what happened was, because I was very vocal against communism, I got a really big wave of haters from the far left. And they were looking at ways to commit character assassination against me. And that's how they found out that I was camming. And so they literally posted this online, on Twitter, screenshots and everything that they knew. And it became a huge thing. Like, it became a trending topic in Spain, and my parents found out this way, that I was doing this. And it was such a huge shock. And I want to explain something before I go on, also because it's necessary for context. So the first month when I started camming, I made a lot of mistakes. And this happens to every single camgirl, because you go into this and you don't know what you're doing. And you're trying to learn. And what you do is you look at the people the more notorious people on top, and you try to emulate what you see, because that's the only way you learn, really. You start by emulating what you already saw and that works for other people. And so I recorded some videos that I am really, really embarrassed of having, made. It's not that I think it's wrong, but it doesn't really go with myself, like with my personality and the things that I like doing. And whenever I see those videos, I feel like such pangs of like regret, and like I feel really ashamed. And after the first month, I started to realize that it was completely 100% unnecessary, and I never again did it. And I've been camming for years and years. And this thing that I did on the first 30 days of my career as a camgirl haunt me to this day. People are still sending each other these videos of mine that I recorded, and it was a horrible mistake and stupid. And I became, so after the first month, I became a strictly non-nude model for 4 years. 4 years I spent as a strictly non-nude model after this thing happened. And everything that I've done since has been like really mild. It's just girls gone mild. That's my thing. Girls gone mild. And right now what I do is I just bounce around like a goof, and that's my whole thing. That's my whole shtick, my whole show. And I realized it was completely unnecessary, and everything I've done since has just been silly and funny and sensual, but never ever lewd or explicit in any way. But these videos that I recorded are still haunting me to this day. And those are the videos that they used when they outed me. And so it was so shameful. Imagine everybody, like, you think that you're doing something in a secluded context, somewhere very closed with only like pervs around you and other models. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking about it. Everybody's swapping, pictures of you and saying the meanest, the most mean comments about your body, your character, your morals, calling you like the worst things under the sun. Like I had so much abuse, so much abuse. And this was the first wave, so to speak. And it was only my parents who found out from, I think, anyway, I don't know, from my hometown. It was just my parents at first. But because I kept on doing everything, I kept up camming, and I kept up writing, and I kept up doing everything that I was doing, because I was not going to let these people win. First of all, I was making incredible amounts of money. Like, it's money that you don't renounce to, okay? It's literal, it's a lot. And second of all, I enjoyed it, and I loved doing what I did. And it was completely different from what I got outed for. Like, the videos they were displaying were like the things that I only did for just a little while and had nothing to do with what I was doing at the moment. And it was just so stupid, and I was not going to stop. So because I didn't stop doing either, I kept on writing and I kept on camming. Eventually, down the line, I got outed a second time, also by communists, and this time it was especially hard in Venezuela. And so everybody found out, like classmates, former college mates, my parents, my extended family, everybody knew, like neighbors, people I grew up with, teachers from my school that I went to, and the reactions of people, it was just insane. Like, I could tell you guys, I could tell you for hours, like, the kind of things that happened to me, but I'm just going to sum them up in like a few tiny little incidents that, stood out. So the first one, one that I really, really remember, I told you that I grew up in a Jewish community. And when I was, I'm going to say 12. No, I was older. I was 15. When I was 15, I had a teacher of Hebrew history. His name was Alberto Habiles. And he was one of the main head figures for this organization called B'nai B'rith, which is, I don't know what it is exactly. It's like an international Jewish organization that helps Jews around the world fight anti-Semitism and relocate them when they move. I don't know what it is exactly. It's not religious. It's secular. But the fact is, he was like one of the main guys there. And my mom, I don't know why, because I was depressed. I was 15 and I was kind of depressed. And my mother thought it was such a cool idea to talk to this person, Alberto Habiles, and she asked him to take me under his wing. I don't know why. And she asked him to ask me to help him with something so that I would go hang out with him after school. I don't know. She thought that would give me a sense of purpose in life. I don't know. The fact is, I didn't know she had done this, okay? And so this teacher of mine, Alberto Habiles, who I actually liked, I really felt kind of I admired the guy in a way. He was a really good teacher, and I kind of felt some admiration for him. And so this guy, one day after school, he was like, "Oh, you're so smart and you're brilliant, and I need help with this anti-Semitism thing that I'm doing. And what I do is I go over all the newspapers of the day and try to find instances of anti-Semitism so I can write to the newspapers and ask them to pull down or to apologize for it, whatever. And I need somebody to help me with this. And I'm going to teach you how to read vertically so that you can get more stuff read quickly. And just, I would have to go to his, with him after school for hours, a couple of times a week, and help him with this. And it was supposed to give me a sense of purpose in life. I don't know. My mom, I learned that my mom had asked him, and my mom was behind it later. The fact is, I spent a lot of time with this dude, okay? He was way older than me. He was like a mentor sort of figure. And I had never heard of him anymore. After I graduated high school and I went on with my life and I moved out and all of this, I never heard anything from him. But when this thing got out, he wrote me an email. And he said to me that I was a prostitute, that I deserved no respect from anyone, and that he couldn't believe that I had done this, and that I was doing this to my parents and to my family. And this was by then I guess he was a 50-year-old man. I don't know. But imagine my shock of receiving an email from somebody from my childhood that I respected and that I admired, telling me these things. And he wasn't the only one. Like I received emails from a lot of old men from the community. They added me on Facebook and told me nasty, dirty things. Some of them would downright insinuate to me sexually, just people I had never spoken to, that I had no idea who they were, but they knew my grandparents. Others would just downright call me a whore, a prostitute, a disgrace, a shame, a horrible person. And my parents never defended me. And this is 100% true. My parents, the first time they learned about this, they came to Miami. They showed up unannounced, and they came knock on my door, and they got me into a car, and they wanted to get me committed into a mental institution. And they said I was suffering from acute narcissism, because how could I be doing this to them? And then when it exploded again on harder, my mother told me that she wanted to kill herself because I was such a disgrace. And she didn't say that I was a disgrace, but she said she wanted to kill herself, which is pretty much the same thing. And she told me the community, like so many people from the community, were giving her phone calls. And I'm guessing the content of those phone calls was similar to what I had to face. And eventually, because of all of this, we just cut contact, and I don't talk to my parents. And this is because a religious community has such an impact and such a grip and such a social Armstrong on its own members that parents prefer to cut ties with their children and not defend them than face the consequences of all the social punishment, because on my case, at least I had left. I didn't have to see them every day. But my parents didn't, and they still have to face these people, these horrible people that they live with daily. And I feel really guilty sometimes about it. And I wish that things would have turned out differently in a way. But it's just something that you have to live with. Like sometimes your own decisions in life, like you can't stop doing the things that you have to do just because you're afraid that somebody else might get hurt from the backlash, the social backlash, I have to live my life, and I have to do the things that I think are right for myself and the people around me, and people need to learn how to deal with that. with other people's decisions. Like, this was my decision. But yeah, it was definitely stressful. It's something that comes up every now and then. And I'll give you another example. So a couple of days ago, somebody from my high school followed me on Twitter, on my camming Twitter. And it's a tiny account. I for the longest time, I never had social media just because I wanted to spare my parents the embarrassment. And last year, I decided finally that I was not going to care anymore. And I started doing everything the way I wanted. And I got this Twitter account, and I haven't done much, advertisement for this Twitter account. So it's really tiny. And I only use it just to tell my closest, viewers and people that follow me, when I'm going to be online. So it's not supposed to be, I'm not supposed to have, family or friends in there, because I'm not talking about, I don't know, my personal private life in there. I'm just talking about Cam. And so imagine my shock when I receive an email from Twitter this person has followed you on Twitter. And I was like, okay. And I go there and I do that little thing. First of all, I went and see who this guy was following and who followed him. Because you get to see who follows you from there. And I figured they're probably in contact with a bunch of people from high school. And if any of them follow me, I'll know. So I started to look into it. And yes, I found another person who was also following me. So I did the whole thing where you unblock them so that they stop following you, but you didn't block them. You force an unfollow. I did this to both of them, and then you would think that this is enough, right? You would think that the person would see, this person does not want me to follow them. I'm just going to mind my own business, and if I want to creep on this person, I'll do it anonymously, like a grown-up, like a mature person. But no, that's not what he did. He went ahead and he followed me again, and I had to force the unfollow again. And now I have to feel like I am being watched by these people who never graduated. We graduated 15 plus years ago. Okay? They should have, they should have a life. They should have a job, children, a house, pets, a life, Instead, they follow me on Twitter because they just haven't gotten over it. And in part, that's kind of why I'm doing this video in a way, is because, I'm tired. I'm tired of hiding, and I'm tired of pretending like my two lives are divorced from one another. And the truth is, I am an integral person. I am the same person. I'm just one whole individual, and I'm tired. And so that's why I'm doing this whole podcast thing. And, yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that you go through when you get outed. You get outed, and it's not something that happens just once. That's the crazy thing. It doesn't just happen once. It happens over and over and over again, because there's always new people coming into your life and people from your past that never found out. So every time every time a new cluster of people find out, you go through it all over again and all over again. And it's just something that you have to deal with and live with. And this is one of the reasons why it is so well paid, because this is hard. People commit suicide, and you have to have fortitude or not care in order to live through it and tell the story. And most people just confide, and they're just trusting that this never will happen to them. But it's not always the case. I'm the living proof that it isn't always the case. And I made so many mistakes. If I could turn back time, I would do so many things differently. But it's too late to ponder and think, what if? And what if I had done this? And what if I had done that? It's all done. And it's all already done. But yeah, that's definitely one of the most difficult things that I have to go through in my life is the public humiliation, the public degradation, and having to live through my family not supporting me, not giving me any support. And yeah. Wow, that was quite the story. So people then ask me, like, so then why do you do this? So why, if it has been so hard, if you've had so many issues, if you regret it, if this and that, why do you do it? And it's so simple, really. I do it for two reasons. One is because if you're not a part of this world and you're seeing it from the outside, you don't understand anything about it. You think it's all like, lewd and dirty and explicit and just raunchy and terrible. But once you're inside, like, you see all the nuances and you understand that there's so many different ways of doing it. And pretty quickly, like pretty quickly, I think probably my second month in, I found out what worked for me. And I am a true entertainer. I spend every time I broadcast, I'm on for hours entertaining people and finding ways to make them laugh. And I'm goofy and I'm silly. And yes, there is a sexy aspect to it, but it is so subdued in comparison to what you have in your mind that this is about. And there's just many different ways of doing it. And to me, this has become really a passion. It's like somebody who has a vaudeville show or mixed maybe with a little bit of burlesque. That is what I do. And it's like a show. It's like having a Broadway, not Broadway, but like, I don't know, where do these people do their shows? Vegas? I don't know. But I feel like I'm on a stage and I have all the emotion of seeing, a crowd waiting for me and watching me perform and making them laugh and making them have fun and ease, their stress and their pain. And people genuinely leave happier. I make their lives better. And I feel really good that I can provide a space for them to feel like they can be themselves and relax and forget. And they're somebody. When they come into my chat room, they are someone. And they are heard and they have friends waiting for them. And I'm just so happy that I can provide that space. So I really like it. So that's one of the reasons I do it. And the second reason is because it is just such a huge amount of money, really. And it is so much money that you can't deny it. You can't say no. It's an offer too good to refuse. And it's not going to last forever. And I already shouldered all the risk. I already had all the bad consequences happen to me. So all I have from now on is the positives. I went through the bad so quickly, so soon into my career, that all of that I have to deal with after has just been good, because the bad is already behind me. So in this way, that is why I also wanted to talk about how much camgirls make, because I don't think people actually realize, like normal people, like people in the vast world out there, I don't think most people know how much a camgirl actually makes. And so I'm here to tell you all about it. And I can tell you from my experience, I can tell you from what I have talked to with other models, and I can also tell you from the leaks that have happened in the past. Now, I have worked on 2 different websites. The first one is called MFC. And this website, in theory, has better income than the other one. And I'm going to talk about this first website now. So there was a leak a couple of years ago where they say it was a mistake. I'm not entirely sure that it was. But you see, on MFC, there is a contest called Miss MFC. This is a contest where all the models that are working on that website are ranked by raw amount of money made in 1 month. And they're ranked from 1 to 250. Although now I think it goes all the way up to 1,000. But I don't know. I left that website years ago. The fact is, by the time the leak happened, it went from number 1 to 250. So the models always know who's the model that's made the most amount of money that month. The second, third, fourth, and so on and so on. Everybody knows where they are at in the rat race of camming. And there's a page inside MFC for the contest with the ranking. And what happened was, 2 years ago, the amount of tokens suddenly showed up next to the names of the models, like how many tokens they had made. Tokens is the currency of one of these sites. It's like chips at a casino. Like people buy these tokens and then they use them to tip models. And models earn their money in tokens. So what happened was, all of a sudden, all the models had made was visible on the Miss MFC website, and people took screenshots and uploaded it. And from the information that was leaked then, the number 1 model on MFC that month, and from what I've heard from other models, it's happened plenty of times. Number 1 model makes $100,000 a month. Number 2, the top 10 models make somewhere around $50,000 a month. Top 20 make $30,000 a month up. Top 100 make around $15,000 a month up. And I don't have the numbers for top 250 because when I left, it was just up to top 100. So as you can see, it is a lot. It is a lot. It is a lot of money. And on the other website that I'm working on, last year, there was somebody who was tracking all the tips. They made a sort of like bots that would, comb the chat room for tips, and they would count and make a tally of all the tips that each model received, and they put it in a ranking, and they called it chatterbait100.com. And it wasn't accurate because I was always in the top 5, but and I knew because I could compare it with my own data, and it was pretty off. But I'm sure that at least the ranking, they got it pretty right, even if the amounts were off. So on Chatterbait, the highest that I have seen a model make was around $70,000 a month. And that was model Shy Jane. She's a Lush. She's an interactive toy kind of model. And the top 10 make $30,000 and up. And the top 100 make $8,000 and up. Personally, my best month ever, counting everything, I made $60,000. And on average, I make $40,000 a month. So as you can see, this kind of income is not something that you can renounce easily. Like even if you're hurting people, or if not hurting people, because I don't think that I am hurting anybody. I think that society is hurting people by having these lynch mobs loose, creating all this chaos. But even if you know that indirectly people are getting hurt from your actions, this is not something that you can renounce lightly. This is a very incredible yearly income. And you have to take into consideration that camgirls, we do everything. Like, I have no employees. I do my makeup, I do my hair, I do my lighting, I do my editing, I do my sound, I do my advertising, I do everything is done by me. So I have no employees and I don't have an office. I come from home. So basically my capital, my investment is zero. And the only thing that camgirls pay is taxes. That's the one expense for camgirls. And maybe they spend a little bit on equipment. I do, but most girls don't. and that's about it. So it's actually, that's 100% profit almost. And so I'm very happy doing something that I love and earning very well, and this is something that only people only dream about. Like, think about it. I often think of like where I would be if I wasn't doing this. Where would I be if I had decided, okay, I'm not going to commit suicide, but I'm just going to hang the towel. I'm just going to hang the towel and I'm going to go do 9 to 5. I'm going to go back into the grind. I am going to forget that I ever cammed and I'm going to go back into a normie life. Where would I be? And now I think I see myself and all that I have accomplished and the situation that I am in and how I did it all on my own. And I think about all the people that mocked me and humiliated me. And I can't deny that I feel a little bit of schadenfreude when I go into their Twitter accounts and I see their sad lives and how they struggle and how they are still doing breadlines and how, you might be, what I do might be against your morals, but I have secured a future for myself. I've secured a future for the people around me and those who are with me. And make no mistake, if my family had been more supportive of me, I would have shared everything with them. Everything. If my friends had been more supportive of me, I would have shared everything with them. I would have brought them with me. I would have given them everything they needed to get out of there. But everybody was everyone betrayed me or dismissed me or shunned me, or just, I think there was just one person, out of all my friends, out of all my acquaintances, there was just one person who wrote me an email and was kind to me. And it was Caesar, my gay friend who's living in Sweden. And I often think it's because he probably also had to deal with a lot of, family drama and shunning and everything because of his, sexuality. So he's more open than most people would be. And this is something that you learn through camming is, so, that I believe in astrology, and I always say this. And in astrology, each planet has a personality or a role or an archetype, I guess, in a way. And Saturn, so the two conflict planets are Saturn and Mars. And Mars kind of dictates how you're going to be conflictive. And Saturn, they call it the stern teacher. Saturn represents the father. It's all the limitations and the hardships. But in the end, it always leaves you a gift. The gift of lesson learned. It's tough love. It's the planet of tough love. And I feel like, to me, I have gotten so many gifts out of the thing that happened to me, out of this outing situation, because I was able to clean my life out of toxic and evil people. I was able to shake off all of these so-called friends who were never my friends, of the family that was never, was only in name. And you finally, you're better off without them. You're better off without them. Even though it's painful, even though it's horrible and you feel like you want to die, when you go through it and you're on the other side and everything is fine, you really are better off because you took off all this dead weight that was placed on your shoulders for no reason. So I don't know. I feel like this podcast is like really somber. And I wanted it to be exciting and fun and adventurous. I don't know, maybe it's because a lot of things that have happened have been sad. But I have also had so many fun things happen to me. I have lived, thanks to this, I've been able to live. I lived in Miami Beach. I lived in Vancouver, Canada. I lived in Tokyo, Japan. I lived in Europe. I've lived in almost every continent. I have moved so many times. I have met so many incredible people. I have traveled extensively, and I have been able to save quite a bit. And I have a really nice pile, where that makes me feel very secure and confident and calm, that even if everything went crashing down tomorrow, I would have time to react and and do what I need to do without going into a panic. And to me, somebody who left their home with $900 in her back pocket, this is quite an accomplishment. It makes me feel incredibly proud of myself. And every time that I go online, all I'm thinking is, I created all of this. I created a community of people who love each other and support me. I have created a place for them to go to. I have created a future for myself and a present for myself. And I have nobody to thank but me. I am the person who did all of this happen without help from anyone, really, or support. And it's actually a happy story. It has a happy ending. And I wanted to do this a 2-hour podcast, but I am seeing that I need to be way more detailed in my explanations to make it a 2 hours, because it's just an hour and a half. But this is all I have for today. So I am going to just say goodbye. Maybe I will have to reshoot this and do it again. Or maybe not. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed my first podcast. And I will see you again next week. Have a wonderful time, and don't listen to what people tell you. Do whatever you think is right for yourself. See ya.